2010 when I crossed the Atlantic. So the route will take you from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. It's a very simple downwind, what you call a trade wind route. So you're gonna, if you're patient enough, you're gonna get blown across. Probably. So it might take a long time, but the currents and the winds will take you to the Caribbean at some point. If you row, you're going to get there a bit quicker. But there was the year that I crossed, and there were other boats as well, wasn't the fastest of years to cross. There were a lot of areas of low pressure, so that switches the wind direction basically. So instead of getting blown across, it was getting blown back, and that was really demoralising. And there's nothing you can do. You can't get out the boat and go home. That's it. You're there. You're committed. You've got to do it. And when you're drifting backwards, I mean, there's things you can do. You can drop something called a para anchor, which is like a parachute that sits in the water, and then it minimises your loss of ground. You can't drop an anchor to the bottom because it's 3 miles to the bottom. It's never that far from land. It's just the wrong way. But when you're getting blown back, it's very demoralising. But when you're going the right way and you're being blown along, it's the best place you could ever be. Like, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's magical.
I can imagine. So what was like your sort of daily routine whilst you was, because obviously you were by yourself.
I was, So my daily routine looked something like this. I would wake up at about 7 o'clock, and then the first thing I would do is I would make a cup of tea. So I'd have a cup of tea. I had a tiny little cabin at the back. You can't stand up in it or anything. You can only really lie down. At the front of the cabin, I could sort of just about sit up, and my head would be almost touching the ceiling. But that's where I slept, and that's where, if the weather got very, very bad, that's where you would go in and close the hatch door. So I'd get up around 7, have some breakfast and a cup of tea, and then I'd get straight out. What I would do is see how far I've drifted overnight. Sometimes you'd be drifting the right way because the wind's taking you. Other times you would. It was quite common to just sort of go around in circles, really. Every now and then you would you would drift backwards as well. And then I would get on the oars and I'd row for 4 hours straight. Okay. It sounds like that's not that big a deal, but you have to remember, it's not like rowing on a rowing machine at the gym. You're not going hard. If you're out of breath and you're breathing heavy, you can't sustain that. So you're literally just tapping the oars. You're just sort of steering the boat, and you're really just sort of enduring and surviving the environment, to be honest. So after my 4 hours, I would stop. It would be lunchtime. I would then have a dehydrated meal, and then I'll come back and do another 4 hours. And then after that, I would stop, have something to eat, and then I would either do 2 hours or another 4 hours, and that would take me up to either midnight or just after, depending on how. I used to aim to row for 12 hours a day. Sometimes I hit that, sometimes I rowed for more, sometimes I rowed less, depending on how I felt. If it was a particularly good day and I was flying along with really good wind and waves and conditions, I'd try and row till I just couldn't do it anymore. But what would happen is that would then affect you the next day, and you could hardly do anything. So it worked out that if you paced yourself for around the 12 hours a day of seat time, actually pulling on the oars, for me, that was really the limit of what I could do and sustain day in, day out. When you're not rowing, you are either resting, eating, or writing a blog, or doing a little bit of maintenance on the boat, and that's about it. You have to keep the bottom of the boat clean and smooth, because you're traveling through the water quite slowly. You get growth build up on the bottom, and that can slow you down. So you could only do this on a really calm day. You'd actually get out of the boat and into the water to clean the bottom of the hull, because if you kept the bottom of the boat clean and you gained just half a knot, that may not seem like much, but that half a knot over every hour, over every day, over every week can actually become quite significant. So it was all about little details and keeping a good routine going, So that helps. Actually, getting in the water in the middle of the Atlantic was like crazy. It was also really warm as well. So it was like a hot bath. The water was beautifully clear blue, and you'd look down. It was just stunning. There was wildlife everywhere, fish swimming around, whales, fin whales. There were also sharks, oceanic white-tip sharks. They were very fascinating creatures. I never got in the water when I knew that they were around. But one day something crazy happened to me. I was scraping the bottom of the hull, and this little fish, probably about this big, it was a brightly coloured, it actually bit me on the nipple. I couldn't believe it. Didn't really hurt. It was the shock of it. It was like someone pinched me. So that was quite an interesting experience that I doubt will happen again. Flying fish, they really do fly. I was hit in the face by one. They have little wings. They really do fly. They're incredible creatures. Big giant turtles. It was just amazing. And when you're out there in the middle of the Atlantic, and you look up at night, the stars are amazing. If it's a clear night, if it's a cloudy night and the moon isn't out, it will be a darkness that you've never experienced before. Like you won't see your hand in front of your face. It's that dark, and that's quite interesting. At no point was I ever really scared as such. There were a few moments on particular nights where it was quite rough and the waves. The problem that you've got at night when it's dark, you don't know. You can be disorientated and you can hear the waves coming, but you don't quite know where they're going to hit from. And so basically, a large wave would hit the boat and you just inevitably get soaked. It's a bit colder at night as well. And I remember there was one particular night where I was rowing and I was just kind of like a bit out of my comfort zone, if I'm honest. And my grandfather passed away just before I was about to row across the Atlantic, and I wanted him to live long enough to see me complete it, but he didn't, and I was like, that's a shame. So I put his name on the boat, and his name was Rocky Rochelle. And there was one particular night where I just felt a bit out of my comfort zone, to be honest. I was cold, I was tired, I was a bit scared, and I was rowing along, pitch black as well. And all of a sudden, this overwhelming feeling of warmth, happiness, content just came over me. And it was almost as if I felt like a presence, as if someone was sat next to me. It was crazy. Never experienced this in my life. And I never looked actually to look at, was there someone there? I just kept looking forward and I just kept rowing. And it was magical. And I don't know, maybe there were people looking down on me. And I'll tell you something really interesting. I had a special system on the boat that when I was sleeping at night, you just let the boat drift. And so I had a system on the boat that would sound an alarm if a big commercial vessel was coming towards me or got too close. So every night when I thought this alarm system was working and I was completely safe because it's going to go off and wake me up, when I arrived in Antigua, I realised and found out that it never worked from day one.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, maybe there was someone looking over me at night. That was quite interesting. But I'll tell you a little bit more about it because it was quite interesting because I was really nervous when I set off. I thought I'd bitten off way more than I could chew, and mentally I was looking, you naturally start looking for a get out of jail card. And so, because as soon as you step out your comfort zone, any human being won't want to be there anymore. And so you start looking for excuses of how could I get out of this without losing face, without losing credibility, without looking stupid. And then you kind of realise that you kind of can't. And I remember before I set off, I spoke to a guy. He'd sailed around the world a few times. He was really experienced. And he said, if you can survive the first 3 days, you will be able to survive for 3 months. It's all in your head out there. And I remember when I pushed off and got going, the reality of actually how hard it was to pull the boat along when it's fully loaded with all the supplies and stuff. And I was looking at my speed thinking, oh my God, the boat's not moving as fast as I thought it's going to move. At this rate, it's going to take half a year. This is crazy.